Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education, a podcast that focuses on what is happening in education today, connecting everyone to the movers and shakers that are breaking boundaries in the education arena.
You know, we are so lucky because we always have these great guests, and sometimes we have people who are glutton for punishment and they just keep coming back because we ask them to, but also because they're doing amazing things. And today's guest just keeps doing and doing and doing. So we want to hear what is next on her list.
Absolutely. So Yaritza is back with us. The last time she was here, she was with Ken Shelton, and they were talking about equity and inclusion and culturally responsive teaching. And I don't know, but last time we saw her, she was expecting a baby. So I think Yaritza has some catching up to do with us. Yaritza, let's turn it, and she's one of those people that goes by one name, like Cher.
Cher, yeah.
So Yaritza, we're going to turn it over to you and catch us up. What has been happening with you?
Hi, everyone. I am so happy to be back. Yes, the last time I spoke with you all, I was pregnant. McKenzie is now 7 months. So if you hear Coco Melon in the background, that is just for McKenzie. Things have changed. I became an assistant principal here in Brooklyn. So instead of servicing students who were overage and undercredited, I just service students with a high population of students with disabilities. What a transformation. But as of last week, I resigned from the New York City Department of Ed. And later on in the show, I'll let you guys know exactly the new position that I'm taking on April 1st.
I got excited when I saw that on Twitter and I said, oh my gosh, we'll have even more to talk about. And then that's when you said, it seems like every time I come, there's something new. Besides a project that you're doing, you're changing things in your life. Yeah. So that's so exciting, your evolution here. You know, we didn't discover you. We heard about you from Ann Cosma from Flipgrid. And we had her on the podcast, and we told her we wanted to do the topic of culturally responsive teaching, and we wanted to do a lot about that. And I think actually the first one was really just kind of challenges with education too. So there are a lot of different topics, but we heard about you from her. And let's start there, because that was probably one of your first big projects, right? Was new things outside of school-related education, was doing your projects with Flipgrid, right?
Yeah. Before actually just starting the Ask Yaritza series with Flipgrid, a lot of what I did was just create culture responsive curricula and resources for not only my students, but teachers all over the world. I began a nonprofit, and the idea was, well, if I can make it and I have these extra resources at my school, why don't I just make sure that, you know, everyone has access to it? So then I created YV Educational Resources. Once it was a pandemic, I was just like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm no longer at work with my friends, so why don't I get on Twitter? I started to share more resources on Twitter, and then I started to connect with Ann and Flipgrid and Jess and Jornay. And the more I shared, the more I put up, it was like Flipgrid was just retweeting. That turned into them saying, you know, let's have a partnership. Let's amplify your voice. Let's amplify the resources that you're making. And then we had Ask Yaritza come about last year. And I was able to actually connect with over 200,000 educators internationally. They would ask me different questions, and I would use those questions as the topics for every Monday show. And if I felt like, oh my God, I didn't really get to address the topic as deep as I wanted to, then I would just support it with a blog post that following Friday.
Perfect. That is amazing. So what were most frequent questions? What are some of the questions that were asked of you?
Some started off just as simple as, what is culture responsive teaching? How can I implement it in my classroom? Others were more of, hey, I only teach white young males. How could I be more culturally responsive? And then you had some who were genuinely just confused about what culture responsive teaching is and what it looked like in other places like India or Africa, right? So then we had to get into, how does this young woman from Brooklyn, New York, actually help you out with resources that you can use in Africa, that you can use in India, that you can use in Japan. So it took a lot of me actually researching what education was like in those countries. So that way, whatever answers and resources I shared, I wouldn't, really disrespect or come on as offensive to anyone else. So that was almost like a little journey for myself as well. But I would say the hardest question was more along the lines of, folks just giving up and just not knowing what to do next, right? So how do I get support when my administrators don't want to actually give me that support? So there were some questions where I felt like I need to address this, but I can't just have that as the theme of the show, because I didn't want people to feel like, hey, she just took this one conflicting topic and just, make sure that the entire show was about it. I wanted people to understand that the focus is culture responsive teaching. And once you have that down pat, a lot of the issues that you have in the classroom, even classroom management, will start to diffuse.
Right. Do people ask you ahead of time, or is it, and you're still doing this, right?
No, I'm actually changing it up.
Oh.
I am switching it up for the year 2022.
Always doing something
I'm
new.
I'm like all giggles. I think because I haven't told anyone this yet, but it's brewing. It's brewing. I'll let you guys still wait. But what would happen is folks would actually put their questions inside of a Google form. So every week before I even think of the topic, I would just read through the forms. So sometimes I'm reading through 400, 500 questions, right? And sometimes it's the same questions being asked in a different way. And then I would go into my Twitter and I would look at what educator is actually talking about this topic, what educator is actually doing the work, because I really believe that educators are the experts. I'm not just going to have this show and it's only Yaritza talking. I want to amplify the voices of others. So I would just literally look at who I'm following and who I'm not following, follow them and say, hey, would you like to be a guest on the Ask Yaritza show on Monday? And obviously folks would say yes. And then I would just let them know, you're the expert. I'm here to listen to you. So even if I have some guiding questions, the idea is, this is your show. This is your episode. What would you like people to know?
Wow, 500, up to 500 questions a week. I think that really shows the magnitude of this and how people really want to connect in, and they want to do a good job with it. And so we applaud you for taking that on. That's so great.
What I also think is so great is this all started because of your generous giving of your resources. You had so much to give and you didn't want to keep it for yourself. You knew that others would greatly, educators, but also ultimately students would greatly benefit from the work that you did. So I think that the evolution of that is so fantastic. It's authentic too. And that's what makes it so great. But in the middle of this, you started out by teaching us too about culturally responsive teaching. But in the middle of this, we also came about this big global discourse about another CRT. Can you talk about the difference between the two, the similarities between the two, and maybe some pushback that you may have gotten from for authentic things that you have created, but because of the negative connotation with CRT, it kind of probably was a little bit of a struggle.
So the other CRT is critical race theory. I think that the folks who are giving pushback don't understand exactly what it is. And if they took the time out to just read about it, then they'll just nod their head in agreement and say, yes, this does exist. And it's just the idea that a lot of American history, is infused with racism. We know that there's systemic racism, there's systematic racism, there's racism that exists within all of the operations and all of the systems in the United States, whether if it's government, whether if it's housing, whether if it's education. And so the huge issue that lies is that folks don't want to be honest, right? Because if you're honest and you say, hey, this is true, then that also means all of the history that people are actually fighting to teach, all of the untold history has to now be revealed. And we have to teach, right? So we have to talk about the enslavement of Africans. We have to talk about the enslavement of the indigenous people. We have to be realistic with the people who have built this nation. And when you think about critical race theory and you think about culturally responsive teaching, they're actually intertwined, right? Because in order for me to teach you, I have to be not only honest about my own biases and know that they exist, but I have to get to know you for who you are. And a lot of a person's identity, a lot of a person's culture all stems from their family's history, their experiences that they go through every day, right? And for most Black and brown kids, a lot of their experiences are racism. A lot of their experiences is looking in the mirror and saying, is today really going to be a good day? Am I going to get stopped by the cops? Am I going to be safe in coming home? Am I going to get to eat lunch while I'm at school? Is someone going to teach the realities of history when I get to school? Did someone provide multiple entry points when they created those lesson plans that they're saying are tailored to my learning abilities and not disabilities, right? So it's a lot of what's going on in the United States, and folks just don't want to say that there's a huge issue. And until people actually agree that this issue exists, we're going to constantly have these conversations. And in another 40 years, it may not be called critical race theory, right? Because we know it's been out for 40 years. In another 40 years, it may not be called that, but we know this exists, right? And people are speaking out about it. And states, I believe right now we're at 28 states that are basically saying, hey, we don't even want this being taught as of date. And it's just going to get larger, because then that means we have to discuss the fact that America was founded on the backs of colored people, right? On Black and brown people.
That's right.
So 20, how many states?
28. I read about it a few days ago because I just want to keep current. And I believe it's 28 states and there's 66 laws in total.
Wow.
I bet if we look today, it's probably a bit more. And it could be as little as they just don't want it to be taught in a class. It could be as little as they just don't want teachers to talk about it. It could be if they have a law or they enacted a law that basically states the parents have a say in what's being taught, that counts towards one of those numbers.
Wow. And then I think also globally, I think you mentioned this before, this is not just a US issue, right? And you probably learned this a lot with your Ask Yaritza series, because you're getting questions from all over. You see global problems with racism, right? Everywhere.
Yeah, racism, sexism, colorism. A lot of countries look at the United States, right? What is being done in the United States? Even when we talked about racism, or we really look at the enslavement of Africans, a lot of countries looked at America almost like a place to have liberty, have some form of freedom. And then you get here and it's like, this is worse than, where I came from. If I was pushed out of my country because I wanted a better life, and I was pulled into the United States because of all of those stories that says, when you see the Statue of Liberty, you have hit freedom. And then you're put into the slums in New York City, and you're just like, hold up, I'm living in tenement buildings. I'm being treated unfairly. Folks are not only taking advantage of me as an immigrant and making me vote for them, but then they're saying, hey, here's a piece of bread just for that vote. Nothing else, right? So when we really look at the history of this country, we have to think about how a lot of the laws that are enacted in other countries stem from what's going on in the United States as well, right? But also, there's a lot of things that I believe our use of propaganda and advertisement hides from the rest of the world. And we frown upon everything else that's happening around us in other countries, but we're just as bad. We're just as bad.
And we need more people like you and Jamie and I to stand up and talk about this and have conversations about this very tough issue. Yeah. And so what would you suggest for two white women like Jamie and I? How can we support? What can we do?
Well, it first starts off with just reflecting, right? So I believe when Jamie asked, like, so, what is this CRT thing and why are people against it? It's first knowing that you truly understand it and you know that, hey, I've seen it here and I've seen it there. And maybe I didn't know the term critical race theory, but I know it exists. I think once you reflect and like, hey, I've seen it, it may not have been like on a large scope, even though it does exist on a large scope. We've all seen it in some form or shape, right? And then after that, it's so now that you know it exists, what are you going to do next? Are you going to help provide those resources to classrooms that are underfunded, but they want to do the work? Are you going to provide an outlet and amplify the voices on your podcast, as you have been doing for people who are doing the work on critical race theory? Are you going to say, hey, well, I know, this woman is having 2 professional developments on critical race theory. And, maybe folks can't afford to go, but I have $50 and maybe I can donate that $50 so at least one teacher can go. So it's those small acts of kindness that I feel is kindness that works.
Yes. And we love having guests that can come on and talk about it and be experts in this area, because we know teachers everywhere then can listen to that for free, that they don't have to worry about paying to get that information. So that's one of the things we're proud to do and want to continue to do. So we thank you for.
Yeah, I love it. There's nothing like free resources. Those are the best resources.
You have found another way to teach us all. And why don't you share a little bit about that as well? Your book.
Oh, I'm signing a few right now. Well, after the show, McKenzie's Time Machine. So while I was pregnant, I took it to Twitter, as I always do, and I asked folks to send me culture responsive texts. I've always had this dream of when I had a child, they would just like be equipped with all of the knowledge, right? Whether if it's discussing Egypt, whether if it's discussing affairs in China, whether if it's just understanding what's going on here, whether if it's dollar diplomacy, whether if it's knowing, your mom is from Panama and your dad is from Jamaica, how did the two mesh? And when I asked, I didn't know that folks would send me books that are not culturally specific to who McKenzie is, meaning she's a baby born in Brooklyn, right? She's not a Panamanian like her mother who was born in Panama, right? So her culture is going to be totally different than mine. There are going to be some things that I share with her, right? But there's going to be some things that she's going to share with me because I wasn't born in Brooklyn. I was raised in Brooklyn, yes. But kids have a different way of understanding their environment. And when I read the books, I was like, this is not going to speak to who my daughter is. Like, yeah, we read Nancy the Spider when I was in kindergarten, but she's not from Africa, right? Her ancestors are from Africa. Yes, she's going to know some life lessons, but I want her to pick up a book and know, hey, that's me, or that character looks exactly like me. Or if it doesn't look exactly like you, then that book mentions something that resonates with you the most. And I felt like out of all the books, and I received a lot of books, some that I haven't even opened yet because I was just like, where's this going to go? Out of all the books, I was just like, this doesn't speak to who I want my daughter to be. And sometimes
windows, mirrors, sliding doors, right?
Yeah. And as parents, we're going to keep trying our best to make sure that whatever journey, even if you can't pave the entire way, at least the beginning, it's on you, right? And so I said, let me just write a book. Right?
Just do it myself.
Let me just do it. And so I did 2 drafts and the book was done. But I think it was more because my purpose was not to put a lot of information in the book. I want parents and teachers and students to do the work. I don't want a book that reads off like a textbook or a dictionary. So I'm going to list some individuals and I'm going to group it for you or categorize it for you, but you have to do the work. And a lot of the comments that I've been receiving, even in my DMs from teachers, are, I don't know this person, or, wow, I've never heard of these people. And I'm like, That's the purpose. So
the
before you read it out loud to your kids, you're going to want to know who that person is. And it was the same with McKenzie's dad. I was reading a book with him, and I was like, "Hey, babe, you're reading so fast. What's going on?" And he was like, "Well, I don't know that person." I said, "Well, when you read it to McKenzie and she starts to talk back and says, 'Daddy, who's this person?' What are you going to say?" So you also have to do the work. So it's just accountability.
It's a springboard. It's a springboard for further, deeper conversation, and for inquiry from the children. I love it. And so, I mean, it's also, you obviously use it in bedtime stories, but I'd imagine that this is a great teaching resource in the classroom.
Yeah. So I've had, from the images and videos sent to me so far, there's been about 17 classes who are using it. And it's elementary all the way up to high school. And I think it's because they understand the purpose, right? You can use this. I have a teacher right now in high school who's using it to help kids create goals. So she sent me a video of herself like reading to the kids, and I was like, "So what's your lesson?" And she was like, "Goal setting." And she's like, "After this, I still want them to complete the I Can Be project, but I want it to go beyond just the Flipgrid." Now that you've been introduced to all of these people who have shaped the nation in one shape or form, what are you going to do to help contribute to that? And I was just like, I love it. I love it. So folks are sending me videos or pictures, and I'm like, this is what I want. So I wanted to go beyond just the bedtime story.
I love it. I love it. We are going to purchase from you a signed copy, if you don't mind, and we are going to raffle it off to someone on social media for fun. And to, when we share this podcast, we want to obviously share the book as well. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, that's great. That's definitely
you're going to have to sign another one for us. So. Yeah.
I'm loving it. I have like this custom made stamp of McKenzie's feet, and it has a heart, and it says Heart McKenzie.
Oh, that's so funny. I actually think I in one of your posts, I mentioned that a stamp like that. I have my baby's stamps in feet. Yeah. And I used it for stationery. I used it for wrapping paper. I actually wrote a book around that time, but it wasn't anything that it would be relevant.
You could have still used it. And you can still use it today.
You're right. That's fantastic. I mean, and that was, so you did it in 2 drafts. I mean, because within a year you did it. And of course, having a baby obviously really gets us motivated to do many other things. And obviously she's the best motivator in the world. So that's fantastic. But wow, having a baby, becoming an author, all in the same couple of months, that's incredible.
Yeah,
incredible.
Thank you. And quitting my job.
Oh yeah, forgot about that. So you can tell us more about that.
So when I took the job as assistant principal, the idea was that I would continue to work on instruction and implement culturally responsive teaching. So I have this set group of teachers, 19, who really need assistance. And what I found myself doing is policing students. I found myself breaking up fights. I found myself being a dean, a secretary, everything you can name. And I felt like my purpose, and what I feel like my purpose in life is, I'm not serving it. So after 12 years of being in a part of the DOE, I was just like, I gotta go. But of course, I'm not just going to leave and not know what my next step is. So you guys are hearing it first. I'm going to be an education specialist with Flipgrid.
Oh, yay.
Incredible.
So we're going to extend the scope of the Yaritza series. The idea is that I'm just going to provide different resources for helping students in urban settings, right? And we know urban settings exist internationally. So what does that look like, right? Like one example, there's a lot of teachers who go into teaching and most likely go into the urban setting because they have this save them complex, right? I'm just going to go in and I'm going to change it. I'm going to save the kids. And sometimes it's more harm right? Because you're coming in with one mission and you're not thinking about the individual students and their needs. So just topics like that, topics that I believe people touch on, but they never really get deep into it to know why these things are just failing, right? Everyone talks about the achievement gap, but no one talks about the resource gap. No one talks about the fact that Black and brown children are not really achieving at high success rates because most of these schools are poorly funded. And when we think about state taxes, when we think about all the taxes and all of the money that's actually going and funneling into the private sector is being taken away from the public sector. So everything folks are really afraid to discuss, Flipgrid has given me the platform to discuss it.
That's incredible, because otherwise we just keep going around and around in circles and nothing ever gets done. You have to get to the root cause and face that root cause and make changes to those. So, and now you are serving your purpose. Perfect.
And I will also say that the teachers that are on Flipgrid typically are ones that are willing to take a risk and make a difference. And so speaking to the right audience too. And I think that it will just be like that pebble in the water. They'll make a ripple and it'll make another ripple, and you will have no idea how far your influence has gone.
Listen, that's the goal. I think there were a couple of other companies who wanted me to come and work for them, but my eyes since last year was set on Flipgrid because I just know that they truly understand the importance of meeting the individual students and educators where they are. I don't want to just go to another company because it sounds good or it looks pretty. I want to go somewhere where I know they're doing the work, it's meaningful, and it's free for educators.
Free. And that speaks to what you're all about as well, providing those resources. I was just going to say that, when Microsoft purchased Flipgrid, I mean, how wonderful that they kept it free like that, because it makes such a difference. So this is accessible to everyone. And that's what's going to, again, make that biggest difference. So fantastic. We are so happy for you. That is exciting. It really is. And you obviously can work from home, right? So you're able to do that. And that's just amazing. It really is just an amazing company, amazing people, welcoming people, and you belong there. So that's fantastic. Good. So this is great.
To land this plane, we always like to ask this question. So you have had quite a year becoming an author, a new job, making a pivot in your career. What's become clear to you in all of this?
That goes right back to, my purpose. I think I haven't lost sight of what my true goal is, which is to help teachers in any way that I can. Even when I got pregnant with McKenzie, I was still just like, I need to get this done and I need to record this. And this person invited me to a podcast and I just need to talk. And McKenzie's father was always looking at me like, you have to rest. And I was like, nope. And even the times where I've said like, I'm going offline for a few weeks, I would still find myself answering DMs or telling teachers, hey, go on this website, or creating. And so my passion is just, if I have the strength and the energy to help you, I'm going to continuously do it, because that's just what teachers and educators do, right? Even when we're tired and we say, oh, we're done with this and I'm not helping anymore, you still find yourself on your phone or on your laptop or on your tablet helping someone else. So it's just my purpose at this point. It's true.
And it goes back to another podcast that you were on with us where you were teaching us about culturally responsive teaching. And you said the bottom line is that you need to build relationships with students so that you can be authentic with them and have those opportunities built into your lessons because you know them. It's about building relationships. And that's what you're doing here as well. And I think it really goes back to that. And Jerri, it always kind of circles back. That's how great things are born, right? It really is true.
Yes. We are so appreciative of the work that you're doing. And we are so happy to have had you back on the show. It is great to catch up. Jamie and I talk about you a lot. Your ears must burn because always say, I wonder what Yaritza's up to, and I saw this or I heard that, and so
remember what she said. Yeah, I know.
We are fangirls, and the contributions that you are making are so important, and it's just you're a real treasure to education. So thank you for everything that you've done. But now, before we leave today, tell our listeners, where can they find you? Where can they find your book and learn more?
Hold that up again. Let's see it again. Because if no one caught this, this is the name of, this is your daughter's name, McKenzie.
Yes.
Yes.
It is McKenzie's Time Machine. Yes.
So you guys can find me on Twitter or Instagram at INC_YV. And the book is on Amazon. Hopefully by next month, it'll be in Barnes and Nobles.
Oh,
so
wonderful.
We're moving on up.
Yeah, look at that. Well, we created these choice boards broken down by topic, category of different themes of topics in our podcast, and you will be included in that. And then we also have a link. We'll have a link to the book there as well.
Oh, that's great.
Everyone look for that on our choice boards. And don't forget, every 3 podcasts that you listen to, you get 0.5 CEU credit hours. So make sure, share that too, Yaritza. We'll give them to you. Yeah.
Yes.
Good stuff.
Renew for, listening to the podcasts. They can put credits towards their renewal.
Look at that.
That. Yes.
I love that.
Why not? When they learn from amazing people like you. So
like us.
There's nothing free. Nothing better than free.
That's right. Free.
I agree.
But thanks so much again for joining us. And I'm sure we're going to ask you to come back. And I hope that you find the time with all of your explosions of amazing things you're doing. But we want to continue to learn from you.
In 1 year, what will she be up to next year? Who knows?
Goodness.
Who knows? Definitely not having another baby, though.
Oh, well, tell McKenzie hello, and thank you so much for taking time to be with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening. And if you would like to stay linked up, be sure to follow us on Apple and Spotify, and subscribe to us on YouTube.